African Tales by Bibe.
Cristabel grew up in a small town called Mbise. Her father, Mazi Uzonu, had died when she was 10 years old, and her mother, Jackie, was a petty trader in the village. Cristabel, 24 years old, had 4 siblings who were dependent on her for their upkeep, although the first 2 were learning a skill in Port Harcourt. Cristabel lived in Owerri. She had stayed in this city for 3 years. You may or may not know, Owerri is now known as the capital of Akwuna business in Imo State. Akwuna is an Igbo word for selling one's body for money. One of her village sisters, Udoka, had brought Cristabel to Owerri. Udoka had got her a job as a sales girl in a phone shop, and she was paid some money at the end of the month. But the money was never enough. By the time she removed her transport fare, what remained was not enough to even feed for 10 days, not to mention sending any money home. While Cristabel worked, her mother and siblings also needed money. One time her mother was terribly ill. She hurried home to see her. Due to her mother's condition, Cristabel had to take her to the hospital with the help of her siblings. The little money she had was used as a deposit for her mother's treatment of hepatitis. The balance will have to be paid before her mother would be discharged. But she was thankful to God that her mother responded to treatment. The doctor said if they had not come at the time they did, she wouldn't have made it. That was how close they were to losing their mother. When she returned to the phone shop a week later, Cristabel found out there was no longer a job waiting for her. She had been replaced. The manager, Mr. Jonas, said she was given 3 days' leave, but she stayed a week. She tried to explain to him that the situation was really bad, that she couldn't have left her mother in such a situation. "I'm sorry, you left me with no other choice than to replace you. We can't leave that post vacant for more than 3 days, Mr. Jonas told her blandly. Cristabel was given a severance pay and she left. Udoka told her not to worry, that she would help her get another job. Cristabel thanked her but told her that she will have to scout for a job, this time by herself. "You have already done so much for me by allowing me to stay in your house rent-free. I'll find another job," she told Udoka, smiling. Cristabel knew that Udoka's elder sister, Amara, was the one paying for the house rent while Udoka studied at the university. She was also aware that Udoka had gotten permission from her sister before accepting her into her house. "I must find a better job," Cristabel thought with furrowed eyebrows. "Don't worry, you'll find a better job," Udoka told her, patting her shoulder. Cristabel scouted the city for 10 days before she got another role for a salesgirl, this time at an electronics shop. They sold TVs, deep freezers, gas cookers, washing machines and other stuff. Her salary was a bit higher than what she received at the phone shop. She will be able to send her family some more money than she could in the past. Cristabel reported to work and did her best to fulfill her duties at the store. When she got paid, she sent a reasonable part of her money to her family at home. However, her family's financial needs were still too much for her. The burden was ever increasing. One afternoon, Cristabel looked gloomy and sighed at intervals without being conscious of it. "You have been sighing since morning, Cristabel. What is the problem?" Her colleague, Uloma, asked her. "What else other than money palaver?" Cristabel answered her with another sigh. "My family needs money for different things. Our roof is leaking and the rains are still coming up," she added. "Don't you have a boyfriend that can help you out when you're in need?" Uloma asked with raised eyebrows. "I had a boyfriend once, but things didn't work out, so we broke off." "Well, you need to improve your game," Uloma told her. "You can't stay without one in this country. For you to survive, you need to draw your map very well." Uloma gestured with her fingers. "This job cannot take care of our problems even by half," she went on. "Are men willing to take care of your problems just like that?" Cristabel asked with wide eyes. "You have to give them something in return." "That's only natural. It's give and take," Uloma explained. "Look, unless you want to continue to suffer, else start a side hustle with men and move forward." Cristabel took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "To join this hookup of a thing can be dangerous. A lot of horrible things happen to some of these women," she thought with a heavy heart. She remembered one afternoon a jeep dropped off a young woman and people noticed she was not herself. In fact, the woman had started removing her clothes to the shock of everyone around. A crowd had surged around her, trying to know what happened to her. A group of women had struggled to stop her from going completely naked as people tried to identify her. By this time, the vehicle that dropped her had disappeared. Such was the fate of some sex workers who fell victim to evil men into money rituals. A shudder ran through her as she took a deep breath. She was about to enter murky waters. "I don't really know," she said with a sigh, taking another deep breath. "It's not like you're going to stand on the road. Number, I can give you connections. Just make yourself presentable. You're a beautiful girl." Uloma gestured at her impressively. "Like how much can you make in a night?" Cristabel was getting curious by this time. Uloma shrugged. "Well, in this game, it's never the same. Each customer is different." Uloma gave her different price ranges, from 10,000 to 100,000 per night. Cristabel's heart was beating fast by now. Her brain started doing some calculations. If I could get a minimum of 10,000 a night, that would be 100,000 in 10 days. And my salary is just 40,000, she reasoned. That night, Cristabel couldn't sleep. She turned and tossed on the bed. Even Udoka noticed she was restless and wanted to know what was the problem. She couldn't tell her. She only told her she was just having a sleepless night. By morning, Cristabel had made her decision. When she reached her workplace, she smiled broadly at Uloma. At the slightest opportunity, she informed her that she was willing to get connected to those men. "Okay, good, very good. All you need to do is just pray before you follow any man. That way, God will not allow you to fall to evil men," Uloma told her. Cristabel nodded in agreement. "But does God support this type of job?" a quiet voice within her asked. "I will just be doing it once in a while," she told herself silently. The lure of money was by now very strong in her. Uloma had assured her that she would only be connecting her to good men. Cristabel agreed, but she told Uloma that she lived with someone who had been kind to her, so she wouldn't be staying overnight with anyone and she could only work on the weekends. "It's your decision," Uloma told her. "I don't have any problem with where I live because I pay my own rent. When you pay your own rent, you won't need to be accountable to anyone." Cristabel nodded in agreement. "I'll get to that point." From then on, Uloma introduced Cristabel to some men. Though her heart was beating fast, she did her best not to show that she was scared. The thought of making extra money was too strong, so she stood firm. The first man Cristabel slept with in her new side hustle paid her $25,000 after she did all he wanted. She knew her spirit was sad with what she was doing, but she suppressed it. In 2 weeks, Cristabel made 150,000 naira. She was overjoyed. Uloma told her this was still beginner's money, that when she advanced in the game, she would make more. Cristabel did this job for 1 month and was able to send her family more money than she ever would have with just her salesgirl job. When her mother asked how she got the extra money, she told her she worked an extra job at a garment factory. Her mother believed her and asked no more questions on that. "Garment factory? Where is this garment factory in Owerri? You'll see only hotels. Hotels everywhere." "Which factory?" Cristabel sighed within herself. Udoka found out what Cristabel was doing after a while, and she was literally heartbroken. "Why, Cristabel? Why?" she asked with wounded eyes. "Did I bring you to Owerri to join these girls in prostitution? Do you know what you're doing?" Cristabel stared into thin air petulantly. "Sister, you won't understand my condition because you're not in my shoes," she told Udoka. "Shut up!" Udoka yelled at her in anger. "What is your condition? Are you the only one suffering in this city? Do you want to tell me there's no other responsible work you can do as a side hustle? Well, I pity you. You don't know what is coming to you," she spat. "Sister Udoka, I'm sorry to have disappointed you, but I had no other option." "It's a big lie," Udoka told her heatedly. "There's always an option. Look, you'll have to leave my house within 2 weeks. I won't entertain this, and you'll let your mother know in my presence that you have left my house." Her face was a mask of anger. Cristabel only nodded and heaved a heavy sigh. By entering the street, she had treated Udoka's hospitality with scorn, but she was ever grateful to Udoka. It was never her intention to make her angry or disappoint her. "I will remain thankful to you, sister," she told Udoka. I don't care. Udoka dusted her palms and walked out. Cristabel took a deep breath and let it out slowly. But the truth was that she was tired of staying without money, without eating what she craved, without making her hair when due, without buying new clothes for herself, without sending money to her family back at home when she knew that with each new day, new financial challenges would arise. Within 2 weeks, Cristabel packed out of Udoka's house and rented a one-room apartment in a student's area. She felt liberated. She found out that some other girls were also into prostitution. That gave her a sense of liberty and justification. She began to make new contacts so she wouldn't have to rely only on Uloma. If you're not subscribed to our channel, please hit the subscribe button and keep the notification on. Thank you. Let's continue. Cristabel was approached one Sunday evening by a young man at a notorious bar where sex workers hanged for easy customers. Uloma had introduced her to the bar and told her all she needed was wisdom and good luck. But as for customers, she won't run out of them at the bar. The young man introduced himself as Kachi, and Cristabel gave him a welcome smile. He bought her a drink and goat meat pepper soup. Cristabel gladly accepted the food. Who doesn't like free food? She thought as she picked up the spoon to start enjoying the pepper soup. Kachi smiled at her and enjoyed his own meal. When they were through, he went straight to the point. "I want her all night with you," he said. Giving her a wink and a smile, Cristabel shrugged. "How much are you ready to pay?" She sat back, watching him. Kachi shrugged. "Well, you name your price." "Overnight is 40,000, she told him, hoping he won't start bargaining. 40,000, 40,000, okay. Deal." "Oh, great." Cristabel breathed with relief and joy. Kachi paid before service, so Cristabel felt happier. They retired to a hotel room which Kachi paid for in her presence. They headed to the bedroom, holding hands. Kachi did not let Cristabel rest. They did 3 rounds straight, and Cristabel stopped him when he reached for her again. "Look, you want to collect your 40,000 in full, Abi. Enough, allow me to sleep, I'm tired," she told him breathlessly, pulling away. Kachi laughed and slapped her bums. "All right, go to sleep. You be machine true. Cristabel purred incoherently and drifted off to sleep. Kachi lay on the bed beside her, watching her. In the morning, Cristabel woke up. She looked around the room. She was alone. "Of course he has left," she muttered. She reached for her handbag, which she had kept on the bedside table. Her hands did not touch anything. "Where's my bag?" she murmured, looking around. Cristabel dragged herself up from the bed and her eyes struck at her bag on the floor. Her heart missed a fast beat. She snatched the bag, and it was empty. No, she whimpered. Did that man steal from her? Her phone? The money in her bag? No! She screamed. Oh! Her chest went up and down as she struggled to breathe. If he took her phone, he's most likely going to hack my bank account, she thought with fear. Quickly, Cristabel wore her clothes and dashed out of the hotel room. She asked the woman at the front desk when her client left. I haven't seen anyone of that description leave. I just resumed my duty 20 minutes ago. Anything wrong? The woman asked. He stole my phone and my money, Cristabel said brokenly. Are you serious? Nawa'o, the other woman said, shaking her head. You have to be careful next time. Gosh. Cristabel banged on the counter. Only God will save him the day I see him again. She breathed out. The receptionist stared at her, shook her head and returned to checking her computer. I have to go and block my account, she said suddenly, and ran away. Cristabel realized she was actually stranded with no phone and no money. She remembered she kept small money in her house, so she chartered a tricycle to take her home. She got some money from her house, paid the driver, and hurried back inside. Then she picked up her pillow and screamed into it. "Ah! Ah!" Quickly she took her bath and ran to her bank. She requested for it to be blocked. But as she had feared, Kachi had hacked into her bank account and withdrew her 160,000 naira there. Cristabel began to cry. "What happened? How did your card get compromised?" the customer service woman asked her. Cristabel only shook her head, tears falling down her cheeks. She was remembering all that Kachi did to her the previous night and yet stole her money. She dragged in a breath and wiped her eyes. She was aware of some people staring at her. "I'd like to change my bank account security," she told the woman. Of course. It took Cristabel 2 months to recover from Kachi's robbery. She decided to have a second account without an ATM card. There, she will save most of her money. Time went on. Cristabel continued her trade. She often went to church when she felt her spirit getting depressed, and after praying at the chapel, she would feel better. She always told herself she was trying to survive. It wasn't like she enjoyed trading her body for money, but she said she couldn't continue living from hand to mouth. She didn't want to go through that kind of depression. Lack of money comes with its own kind of sadness, and she didn't want to continue experiencing that. One Friday afternoon, 2 men, Kenny and Ifiko, who were friends, took Cristabel to a house. Kenny had a very beautiful woman with him called Jane, and Cristabel was with Ifiko. They went to Kenny's house, a nice duplex at Works layout, to relax and enjoy the day. Jane wasn't talking to Cristabel that much. Cristabel tried to strike a conversation with her, but she wasn't up for it. After giving her one-word responses, Cristabel left her alone. "Let me mind my own business," she thought. "Yes, she is very beautiful and I'm not a match for her beauty, but is that why she acts so cold and superior?" Cristabel thought with a slight pout. "Ifeko had agreed to pay me a good amount of money at the end of the day, so why should I be bothered about one unfriendly creature?" Cristabel continued, taking a deep breath. The men were discussing business in the living room while Jane went through her phone. Cristabel pulled out her phone too and began to play a telegram game. After a while, the meal they ordered arrived. Ifeko invited them to eat as much as they wanted. Glass cups were needed, so Cristabel went to the kitchen and got some glass cups. Soon they were eating and drinking, but Jane was eating like she wasn't hungry. "Eat, are you not hungry?" Kenny asked her. She shook her head and smiled. "Not so hungry," she said, taking a small bite of the pizza on her plate. Cristabel didn't say anything. She knew Jane's type. They loved to pretend for useless reasons. Cristabel continued to eat the fried rice and chicken on her plate and had a chilled malt drink. After a few minutes, Jane wanted to go to the bathroom to ease herself. Kenny directed her, and she left the living room. Kenny and Ifiko continued to discuss business at intervals while they ate. From what they said, Cristabel understood that they were into importation of some building materials. Kenny seemed to be the richer guy, but Ifiko was also doing well. Few minutes later, Jane returned to the living room walking like a model. "Are you through?" Kenny asked her. "Yeah, thanks," she smiled. Cristabel felt pressed too, and Ifiko directed her to the bathroom as well. Quickly she left the living room and returned shortly after. By this time music was now blaring in the room and Kenny and Jane were dancing. "Do you want to dance?" Ifeko asked her, smiling. Cristabel laughed. "These ones are not in a hurry to jump into bed," she thought. "I pray nothing sinister is behind it all." A sweat ran down her spine at that thought, but she quickly brushed it aside. "Okay, let's dance if you want to," she replied. Soon they were all dancing to the music. Few minutes later, Kenny left the living room and headed upstairs. Jane continued to dance alone. The music stopped suddenly. Surprised, they turned around. A furious-looking Kenny stared at them. He had stopped the music. "What's the problem, man?" Ifiko asked, looking at him with serious eyes. "Ifeko, the money I left on the bed in my room is missing," Kenny said, looking at Cristabel with mean eyes. "What?" Cristabel gasped in shock. "Ah." Jane exclaimed with a pout, looking at Cristabel. "Why are you people looking at me?" Cristabel blurted. "I didn't steal any money." Ifiko looked embarrassed. "Have you checked very well?" He looked at his friend. Of course. The money was left on the bed in a brown envelope. "Look, I'm not letting this slide. 2.5 million naira was there. Now, only 1 million naira is left on the bed. Nobody is leaving this house until that money is found. I only went to ease myself in the bathroom. I've not been anywhere else," Jane said innocently. "Ah, what kind of trouble is this?" Cristabel thought. She was just lost for words. To think they were suspecting her. "After this, you must install cameras in your house," Ifiko told Kenny. "In my house, I already have cameras everywhere, so if this were to happen there, I would see the person instantly. We're only 4 in this house right now. My friend Ifiko is out of the question. So in between the two of you, who stole my money?" Kenny asked, glancing at Jane and returning his eyes on Cristabel. To even think he was primarily suspecting her irked Cristabel. Why is he focusing his gaze on me? Is a thief written on my forehead? She thought furiously. Ifiko turned to her and pulled her aside. "Don't embarrass me," Ifiko said in a thick whisper. "Did you take the money? If you did, bring it out now before the matter escalates." Cristabel looked him straight in the eyes with a heavy frown. "I didn't take the money." Jane sniggered and pouted. Then she murmured something Cristabel couldn't catch. She was furious. Everyone was thinking it was her. "God," she gasped. "You can search me if you want," she told Ifeko. He looked at her like he was begging her not to bring shame to him. "Why would I steal money from you?" Jane said softly, looking at Kenny with innocent eyes. "That's beneath me." The 2 men were deflated. "You better bring out the money," Jane told Cristabel with spiteful eyes. "You're an idiot," Cristabel told her, struggling not to flare further. "Anyone who stole this money should bring it out now, because the action I'm about to take will be highly unpalatable," Kenny said in warning. "I didn't steal your money." Cristabel was vehement. "I didn't see or touch your money," Jane maintained, sitting down and crossing her legs. "Okay," Kenny said, looking at Ifeko. "Let me call my elder sister in the US. She will know the best answer to this." He pulled out his phone from his pocket and dialed a number. Cristabel watched Ifeko. He let out a deep breath and ran his fingers across his head. "What kind of problem is this?" he muttered. He looked at her and looked at Jane. He must be wondering who among us stole the money. Well, let them do whatever they want, Cristabel thought. "Ehe Adan, good afternoon," Kenny greeted his sister on the phone. The phone was put on speaker. After their greetings, Kenny explained to her the situation at the moment regarding his money and 2 women he and Ifeko brought home. "Oh ho, that is a small problem. Let me call Nwadibia for clarification. Once he arrives, he will pinpoint the person who stole the money. Let me call him now." "Okay, we are waiting. Tell him not to waste time in coming," Kenny told her and hung up. Nwadibia? These witch doctors can be mean. Let him be the one that will say the truth, not the one that will lie, Cristabel thought with a frown. Some of them will see the truth and will not say it. She was worried for a different reason. Cristabel looked at Jane. Is she a bit uncomfortable, or am I imagining things? Her eyes narrowed as she watched Jane. Jane looked definitely uncomfortable. Ifeko came to Cristabel again and said urgently, "Girl, what will you gain in this? If Nwadibia arrives here, it's a different ballgame. Let him come," she told him with furious eyes. "I didn't steal your friend's money." Ifeko stared at her and took a deep breath. Then he nodded like he hoped she was telling the truth. Then he looked at Jane. Jane smoothed her hair and looked at us. She glared at Cristabel in particular. Just then, Kenny's phone rang. It was his sister calling. He answered the call and put it on speaker again. Kenny, I've called Enwadibia. He is on his way now. Tell Themu. Let the thief bring out the money before he arrives. If Enwadibia arrives and pinpoints the person after performing some rituals, the next thing is madness. The thief will run mad as a punishment, Kenny's sister said harshly and with emphasis on madness. Then she cut the call. Oh ho, Cristabel exclaimed. My hands are clean, she said, spreading her hands. The way she was undisturbed made Ifiko and Kenny look at her in a different way. Kenny looked at Jane suspiciously for the first time since the matter came up. Ifiko took a deep breath and let it out slowly. We'll see. Ifiko nodded. Please like this video, subscribe, thanks for doing that. Let's finish up in part 2.